"You don't belong here." The words hit the air like a slap. The glass door shook as Catherine shoved the man backward with both hands. He stumbled off the polished step outside the reception area, his worn sandals scraping against the concrete. The dirty old sack hanging over his shoulder nearly slipped to the ground. For one strange second, everything became still. The security man near the gate looked away. A young intern by the front desk froze with a file in her hand. Even the air conditioner humming inside the reception seemed too loud. The man standing outside the door did not fight back. He only looked at Catherine, really looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, not even with embarrassment. Just a long, quiet stare that made her suddenly uncomfortable, though she did not know why. Catherine folded her arms across her chest and raised her chin. Her fitted white shirt was crisp. Her black trousers were sharp. Her makeup was neat. Her heels clicked proudly against the floor as she stepped back from the glass entrance, like a queen guarding a palace. "Did you not hear me?" she snapped through the closed door. "This is not a dump site. Go somewhere else." The man's face was calm, but his eyes had changed. There was something heavy in them now, something deep. He glanced up at the sign above the building. Lexton Holdings Ikeja branch. A branch that had been opened only 3 weeks earlier. A branch built with millions of naira. A branch he owned. But Catherine did not know that. To her, the man outside was only a garbage collector with an old blue t-shirt faded by sun and soap, brown trousers torn near the knee, and a rough sack that smelled like dust and metal. His beard looked untrimmed. His shoulders looked tired. There was dirt on his hand, so she judged him in 1 second. And in that 1 second, she made the biggest mistake of her life. "Get away from this door," Catherine shouted again, then turned the lock with a hard click. Inside, the receptionist desk gleamed under the bright lights. Outside, the man stood motionless. He lowered his eyes slowly to the sack in his hand. Then, he looked up at the tinted glass where Catherine's reflection still moved proudly inside. He did not knock again. He did not explain himself. He did not argue. Instead, he gave a faint nod, as if something had just been confirmed in his heart. Then he turned and walked away. But what Catherine did not know was this. The man she had just pushed out of the company like trash was Leo Adebayo, founder, owner, chief executive officer. And before the day ended, Catherine would see that same man again. Not in torn clothes, not with a dirty sack, but in a suit so sharp it silenced the whole building. And when that moment came, someone would fall to their knees. 3 hours earlier, Lagos had woken up hot. Not gently hot, not the kind that waited for noon. It was the kind of heat that rose early from the ground, mixing with exhaust fumes, bus horns, and the smell of roadside bread and frying akara. Morning traffic had already started building around Ikeja by 7:15 a.m. Yellow buses growled past. Keke riders cut through impossible gaps. Street sellers lifted bottled water, plantain chips, and phone chargers toward car windows. On Opperby Road, the new Lexton Holdings branch stood tall and shiny between an insurance building and a pharmacy. The glass walls reflected sunlight so brightly that people sometimes slowed down to look at it. Inside the branch, everything had been designed to impress. Cream walls, a modern waiting area, neat desks, fresh flowers at the front counter. The slogan on the wall behind reception read, "Every client matters." It was framed in gold. Catherine loved that wall, not because of the words, but because it looked expensive. At 29, Catherine Eze had mastered one thing very well: appearance. She knew how to dress. She knew how to speak with just enough fake sweetness when important people arrived. She knew how to smile at men in suits, and how to ignore people who looked like they needed help instead of offering business. She believed in levels, and she believed people should stay in theirs. That morning, she stood behind the reception desk with one hand on her hip and the other scrolling through her phone under the desk. Her nails were long and polished. Her perfume was strong. Her expression carried the kind of pride that often comes before a fall. "Catherine," said Amaka, the junior admin officer, as she came toward the desk with a stack of forms, "please help me check if the tenor visitors have been entered into the system." Catherine did not look up immediately. She finished typing a message first. Then she sighed. You people want to kill me in this place. Amaka said nothing for a second. She was used to Catherine's tone. Everybody was. The cleaners were afraid of her. The dispatch rider avoided talking to her. The new intern had once greeted her twice and got ignored both times. Even customers noticed it. Catherine was polite only when someone looked rich enough. Still, because she was pretty, confident, and close to branch manager Simon Okafor, most people stayed quiet. She was not dating Simon, at least not officially. But everybody in the office knew she enjoyed the protection of his favor. Simon liked her boldness. He once called her a strong frontline girl who knows how to control the environment. Control. That was the word Catherine loved. She liked deciding who mattered. She liked being the first face people saw when they entered. She liked that little moment when visitors stood before her desk and needed something. It made her feel powerful. Amaka placed the forms down carefully. Please, can you check? Catherine glanced at the list. These ones coming by 10. Are they the real clients, or those free advice people who just waste time? Amaka gave a small, tired smile. Clients are clients. Catherine rolled her eyes. That is easy for you to say. Amaka almost replied, but she stopped herself. There was no point. Across the office, 2 customer service trainees whispered near the printer. One of them, a soft-spoken young man named Tunde, looked toward the entrance and then back at Catherine. She will one day insult the wrong person, he murmured. The other trainee gave a nervous laugh. In Lagos, that can happen any day. Neither of them knew how right he was. At exactly 8:40 a.m., in a quiet hotel room at Radisson Blu in Ikeja, GRA, Leo Adebayo stood near the window and buttoned the cuff of an ordinary, worn shirt. He was 35, dark-skinned, sharp-eyed, calm, in a way that made people reveal themselves too early around him. He was not the kind of CEO who liked noise around his name. He disliked unnecessary publicity. He rarely posted online. He almost never announced surprise visits. Even many new employees had never met him in person. That was intentional. Leo believed people behaved differently when they thought no power was watching, and he wanted truth, not performance. He had built Lexton Holdings from nothing, not from comfort, not from family wealth, not from some uncle with connections. Nothing. Years ago, after university, he had sold used phone accessories from a small kiosk in Computer Village. He had slept in a cousin's sitting room for almost a year. He had been cheated twice by business partners. He had once worn one pair of shoes for 8 months because rent mattered more than appearance. He knew what it meant to be dismissed by looks alone. He knew what it meant when rich-looking people talked over you, as if you were furniture. That memory never really left him. It sat quietly inside him, and it shaped the company he later built. Lexton Holdings had grown from logistics into tech support, procurement, and facility solutions. It now had branches in Lagos, Abuja, and Port Harcourt. The Ikeja branch was new, and Leo had heard small things that bothered him. Nothing huge, just whispers. A dispatch rider turned away too rudely. A walk-in customer ignored because he looked poor. A cleaner crying in the restroom after being insulted by front desk staff. It was never enough to prove a full pattern, but Leo had learned something in business. When small complaints repeat themselves in different voices, the problem is usually bigger than it sounds. So he planned a test. He dressed in old clothes, borrowed from one of the hotel maintenance workers, who, after some confusion, had laughed nervously when Leo explained. Leo rubbed dust lightly on the shirt sleeves, wore faded trousers, simple sandals, and carried an old sack. His driver, Musa, stood by the door, watching with worried eyes. "Sir," Musa said carefully, "with due respect, are you sure about this?" Leo looked at himself in the mirror one last time. The transformation was startling. He looked like a man people would dismiss in seconds. "That's the point," Leo said. Musa hesitated. "Some people can be very rude." Leo gave a faint smile. "Then let them be honest." Musa shook his head. "I still do not like it." Leo picked up the sack. "Neither do I." On the table beside him lay his real watch, a diamond-rimmed timepiece gifted by an investor the previous year. Next to it were his cufflinks, wallet, and car key to a black Mercedes-Benz SA Class downstairs. He left them all there. Today, he wanted no signs, no hints, no mercy from appearance, only truth. Before leaving, he made a quick call. "Simon," he said when the branch manager answered, "How is the office?" "All good, sir," Simon replied quickly, voice bright with the eager energy managers often use around powerful owners. "The team is active. Very impressive front desk this morning too." Leo's expression did not change. "Good. I may stop by later." "That will be excellent, sir." Leo ended the call and stared at the silent screen for a second. "Let's see," he murmured. By 9:18 a.m., Leo was standing across from the Ikeja branch, under a weak patch of shade cast by an electric pole. Cars moved steadily past him. A food seller across the road shouted the price of Puff Puff. Someone argued with a bus conductor. A siren wailed far away, then faded. Leo adjusted the sack on his shoulder and crossed the road slowly. He noticed small things first. The security man by the gate barely looked at him. A cleaner sweeping near the side entrance glanced at him with curiosity, then gave a polite nod. Leo returned it. When he reached the main entrance, he pulled the glass door open halfway and stepped inside. The blast of cold air from the AC hit his face. Reception smelled like room spray and polished surfaces. Catherine looked up, and everything changed. Her entire body language hardened in an instant. No greeting. No good morning. No, can I help you? Her nose wrinkled. "Yes?" she said sharply, as if he had already done something wrong by breathing there. Leo spoke calmly. "Good morning. I would like to—" "Ah!" Catherine snapped, stepping away from the desk. "No, no, no. Where do you think you are going?" A few heads turned from nearby desks. Leo blinked once. "I came to—" "We do not allow this kind of thing here," she said, waving a hand at his clothes, his bag, his whole body. "Please go outside." There was a pause, a very small pause, a dangerous one. Leo remained calm. "Madam, if you can just listen for 1 minute." That was when Catherine lost patience completely. She moved around the desk, heels clicking fast on the floor. "Listen to what? That you want money? Or you are looking for what to steal?" Her voice rose loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Get out of here!" The junior intern stood frozen. Tunde rose halfway from his chair. Amaka turned around from the copier with wide eyes. Leo still did not raise his voice. "You are making a mistake." Catherine laughed in disbelief. "I am making a mistake." Then she pushed him. Hard. Not enough to throw him to the ground, but enough to send him stumbling backward through the door. The glass swung shut behind him. Then, click. She locked it. Inside, her chest rose and fell with pride and irritation. Outside, Leo stood still. A yellow Danfo bus passed behind him. Someone on the road shouted at a bike rider. Inside the reception, nobody moved. Catherine pointed toward the road through the glass. "You don't belong here." The words landed harder than the push, because Leo had heard that sentence before. Not here. Not today. But years ago, at 22. When he had entered a company office in Yaba with his CV inside a brown envelope, and a security guard told him to wait outside because people like him had no business on that floor. He remembered the shame, the hunger in his stomach that day, the way he pretended it did not hurt. Now, standing outside his own company branch, Leo felt that old wound open again, not because he was still that broke young man, but because someone under his name, inside a building carrying his values on the wall, had just repeated the same cruelty. He lowered his gaze. Then, slowly, he removed the old sack from his shoulder. He stared at it for a long second. His reflection in the glass looked tired, dusty, small. Catherine had already turned away, smoothing her blouse like the matter was finished. Leo's face became unreadable. He dropped the sack on the ground beside the flower pot near the entrance. Then he turned and walked away. Not quickly, not angrily, just with the kind of silence that means a decision has been made. Inside the office, the air felt wrong. Tunde sat down slowly. That was too much. Catherine heard him and turned sharply. "What did you say?" Tunde swallowed. "Nothing. Then mind your work. Amaka walked to the desk with careful steps. Catherine, maybe he wanted directions or something. Catherine scoffed. Directions to where? The nearest dustbin? Nobody laughed. That annoyed her even more. She flipped her hair back and returned to her chair. These people are very smart these days, she muttered. You allow them 1 minute, next thing your phone is missing. Amaka looked toward the door again, unease growing inside her. There had been something strange about the man. Not his clothes, his eyes. He had not looked confused. He had looked disappointed. Very disappointed. That sat badly with her. Still, she said nothing else. At 9:41 a.m., Simon, the branch manager, stepped out of his office. He was in his mid-30s, clean-shaven, wearing a pale blue shirt and dark trousers. He carried the air of a man trying hard to appear important. Any updates? He asked. Catherine smiled sweetly at once. All under control. Simon nodded. Good. We may have surprise movement today. What kind of movement? Catherine asked. He adjusted his sleeves. Maybe a senior executive visit. I am not sure. That should have made her more careful. Instead, it made her sit straighter. Perfect. Important people. Her kind of people. Simon returned to his office. Tunde stared at his screen, though he was not reading anything. A strange feeling sat in his chest. He could not explain it, but he kept seeing the way the man outside had said, "You are making a mistake." Not loudly, not proudly, just like a fact. Leo's car waited in the shaded corner of the hotel parking lot. When Musa saw him returning without the sack, he straightened at once. Sir? Leo opened the back door himself and got in. Drive, he said. Musa glanced at him through the rearview mirror and started the engine. How bad was it? Leo looked out the window as the car rolled out. Bad enough. He said nothing more for a while. They passed through morning traffic, under giant billboards advertising telecoms, skin cream, and luxury apartments. A hawker knocked on a tinted window at a junction and moved on. Somewhere ahead, a generator coughed to life. Leo leaned back against the seat and closed his eyes for a moment. He was not just angry, he was hurt, and that annoyed him more than the anger itself, because he had built systems, training, manuals, value statements, customer care programs, orientation sessions, all of it meant to prevent exactly this kind of thing. Yet one woman at the front desk had ignored all of it in under 30 seconds. He remembered his late mother's voice from years ago in Ibadan. The true test of character is not how people behave before kings. It is how they behave before those who cannot fight back. Leo opened his eyes. Musa cleared his throat carefully. Sir, should I call someone? No. Head office? No. Who? Leo shook his head once. Not yet. He wanted to see her face. He wanted no warning to go ahead of him. He wanted truth to stand in the room bare and undeniable. Back at the hotel, he entered the room in silence. The old clothes came off first. Dusty shirt, torn trousers, sandals. He dropped them carefully over a chair instead of throwing them away. For some reason, he wanted to keep them. A reminder, maybe, or evidence for himself that this morning had truly happened. Then he stepped into the bathroom. Cold water ran over his hands. He stared at his reflection. The same face, the same man. Only appearance had changed, and that had been enough for Catherine to decide his worth. When he came out, Musa had already laid his suit on the bed. Charcoal grey, perfectly tailored, white shirt, black tie, diamond wristwatch, Italian shoes polished to a mirror shine. Leo dressed slowly, not out of vanity, but because each step felt like armor. By the time he fastened the watch around his wrist, the garbage collector was gone. Now he looked exactly like what Catherine believed deserved respect, and that, more than anything, made the coming moment bitter. He picked up his phone and made a call. Simon answered at once. Good morning, sir. Leo's voice was calm. Too calm. I am coming to the branch now. Simon brightened. Excellent, sir. I will prepare. Come downstairs and receive me personally. There was a beat of surprise. Of course, sir. Leo ended the call. Musa looked at him. Sir? Leo picked up his car key. Let's go. At the branch, Catherine had just finished touching up her lipstick using her phone camera when she noticed sudden movement outside. The security guard at the gate straightened. Simon rushed from his office so quickly he nearly bumped into a chair. Amaka looked up from her desk. A black Mercedes-Benz glided into the front parking space, the kind of car that makes people stand differently. Simon hurried toward the door, smoothing his shirt, his face eager and stretched into a nervous smile. Catherine stood up fast. "Who is that?" she whispered. Tunde looked through the glass. Then his mouth slowly opened. The driver stepped out first. Then the rear door opened. A polished black shoe touched the ground. Then another. A tall man in an expensive suit rose from the car with quiet confidence, adjusting the cuff of his white shirt. His diamond wristwatch flashed in the sun. His face was composed, sharp, familiar, very familiar. Catherine's heart stopped for one terrible second. No, it could not be. But it was. The same eyes, the same face, the same man she had pushed out. Only now he looked like the kind of man nobody in the building would dare interrupt. Simon reached him first and bent slightly with respectful warmth. "Welcome, sir." "Sir." The word struck Catherine like thunder. Her knees weakened. The room seemed to tilt. She grabbed the edge of the desk before anyone noticed. Amaka turned sharply toward her, then toward the entrance, then back again. Tunde whispered, "Oh God." Outside, Leo said something low to Simon that nobody inside could hear. Then Simon nodded and pulled the door open with both hands. Leo stepped in. The same reception, the same cold air, the same polished floor. But now, every eye in the room followed him with silence and fear. His gaze moved once across the space, past the flowers, past the slogan on the wall, past the interns and staff standing frozen. Then it settled on Catherine. Her lips trembled, her skin had lost color. And in that terrible, stretching second, she knew she had not insulted a beggar, she had humiliated the owner. Leo took one slow step toward the reception desk. Then another. Catherine's breath broke, and before anyone could speak, her knees hit the floor. Catherine's knees hit the floor so suddenly that the sound echoed across the quiet reception. Nobody moved. Not Amaka, not Tunde, not the two trainees by the printer. Even the security guard outside leaned closer to the glass door, trying to understand what had just happened. The proud woman who only minutes ago had pushed a man out of the building like dirt was now kneeling before him. Her hands trembled. Her lipstick looked suddenly too bright against her pale face. I'm sorry, sir." The words came out broken. Her voice had lost the sharp confidence everyone in the office feared. Now it sounded small, fragile. Leo stood still. He did not rush forward. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at her, and that quiet gaze was far heavier than shouting. Behind him, Simon Okafor, the branch manager, frowned slightly. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Simon had expected a routine visit. He had expected smiles, greetings, maybe a quick tour of the office. But what he walked into instead looked like the aftermath of a storm. His eyes moved from Catherine on the floor to Leo's expression, then slowly across the tense faces of the staff. "Catherine," Simon said carefully, confused. "What are you doing?" But Catherine did not answer him. She was staring at Leo like someone who had just seen a ghost. "Sir, please, forgive me." Her voice cracked. I didn't know it was you." Leo's face did not change. Not anger, not pity, just calm. And that calm frightened everyone in the room more than rage would have. Simon stepped forward slowly. "Sir, what happened?" Leo finally spoke. His voice was quiet, measured. "Ask your CCTV." The words dropped into the room like stones. Simon blinked. "CCTV?" Leo nodded once. "Yes." Then he looked back at Catherine. "Because what happened here this morning," he said slowly, "should be seen by everyone." The temperature in the room seemed to fall. Tunde felt a chill run down his spine. Amaka pressed her lips together. Catherine's breathing became uneven. She knew exactly what that footage would show. Simon looked between them again. Now concern was rising in his chest. "Catherine," he said slowly, "what happened here?" Catherine shook her head helplessly. Tears were already forming in her eyes. But the truth was, sitting heavy in the room, and everyone could feel it. Leo turned calmly toward Simon. Let's watch it. The small monitoring room behind. Simon's office had 6 screens showing different angles of the branch. Parking lot, main entrance, reception, customer desks, hallway, and one focused directly on Catherine's desk. Simon walked in first, confusion deep on his face. Leo followed. Behind them, several staff members slowly gathered near the doorway. Nobody had told them to come, but nobody could stay away either. This was no longer a normal office moment. This was something bigger. Catherine entered last. Her legs felt weak. Her heels clicked unevenly against the floor. She wished the ground would swallow her. Simon sat down and pulled up the recording from earlier that morning. He adjusted the timestamp. 9:18 a.m. The screen flickered. Then the video began. There he was, Leo, but not as he looked now. On the screen, he appeared in his disguise again. Old shirt, torn trousers, a dusty sack over his shoulder. Simon's eyebrows pulled together. Who is that? Leo said nothing. The video continued. Leo walked through the entrance. Catherine looked up. Then came the moment. The exact moment. Her face twisted with disgust. Her voice sharp. Even though the CCTV had no sound, everyone in the room could read her lips clearly. What do you want? The video showed Leo trying to speak. Then, Catherine stepping around the desk. Her body language aggressive. Simon leaned forward. The next few seconds played slowly. She waved her hand dismissively. She shouted. Then, she pushed him. Hard. The screen showed Leo stumbling backward through the door. Then Catherine locking it. Then pointing outside. Her mouth forming the words clearly. You don't belong here. The room went silent. No one breathed. Simon slowly leaned back in his chair. Shock spread across his face. He turned toward Catherine. You pushed him? Catherine burst into tears. I didn't know it was him. Her voice shook violently. I thought he was just a garbage collector. Simon rubbed his forehead. The weight of the moment was sinking in. He had recommended Catherine personally when the branch opened. He had told head office she was perfect for front desk. Now the CEO himself had been pushed out by the same woman. Simon swallowed. He looked carefully at Leo. Sir. Leo raised a hand gently. Not angry, just stopping him. Then Leo spoke, and every word landed like a hammer. This is the first point of contact for our clients. He pointed to the screen showing the reception. The first face people see when they walk into this company. His eyes moved slowly around the room. Today I walked in as someone with nothing. He paused. A man with dusty clothes. A man with no status. A man who looked poor. He turned toward Catherine again, and I was thrown out before I could speak. Nobody said anything. Even the air conditioner seemed quieter. Leo continued calmly. Imagine a real customer walking in like that. He looked at Simon, a small business owner, a delivery worker, a young graduate looking for opportunity. His voice grew firmer. If we treat people like trash before knowing who they are. He paused. Then we have already failed as a company. Simon lowered his eyes, because he knew Leo was right. And deep inside, he also knew something else. Catherine had been warned before, not formally, but quietly. Her attitude had raised small complaints, and Simon had ignored them, because he liked her boldness. Now the problem had exploded directly in front of the CEO. Leo folded his arms. Then he said the words that froze the room. Effective immediately. Catherine stopped breathing. Catherine Eze is dismissed from her position. Her heart shattered. Sir, please. She collapsed forward again. Her tears fell freely now. I'm begging you. Her voice cracked like broken glass. I need this job. Leo did not move. She crawled closer. I made a mistake. Please. Her hands shook. My mother is sick. I'm the one paying her hospital bills. Nobody in the room expected that. Amaka's eyes widened. Tunde looked away. Simon felt a knot in his stomach. But Leo remained quiet. Catherine wiped her tears desperately. I swear I will change. I swear. She looked up at him like someone drowning. Please, sir. Please. For a long moment, Leo said nothing. The silence stretched, heavy, uncomfortable. Inside Leo's mind, two memories were fighting each other. The young man he once was, standing outside offices that refused to hear him, and the leader he had become, responsible for hundreds of employees. Justice mattered, but so did wisdom. Finally, Leo spoke again, but this time his voice carried something different. Not anger, something deeper, something that made everyone in the room lean forward. "Stand up, Catherine." Her eyes widened. She obeyed slowly, wiping her face. Leo studied her, not her clothes, not her makeup, but her expression. Fear, shame, regret, real regret. Then he looked toward Simon. "Simon." "Yes, sir." "Who heads the cleaning department in this branch?" Simon blinked. "Currently no one permanent, sir." Leo nodded slowly. Then he looked back at Catherine and said the words that would change her life. "You are not dismissed." Catherine gasped. "But..." Leo's voice hardened. "You are no longer front desk." The room froze again. Leo continued. "From today, you will head the cleaning department of this branch." Catherine's eyes filled again, not with humiliation, with relief. Relief so powerful it nearly made her collapse again. She whispered through tears, "Thank you, sir." But Leo raised a finger gently. "This is not a reward." His eyes sharpened. "This is a lesson." Then he said something that would stay with everyone in that room for years. "If you cannot respect people, then you must first learn what it means to serve them." Catherine bowed her head. "I understand." But Leo was not finished. He turned to Simon. "And Simon." Simon straightened immediately. "Yes, sir." Leo's voice was calm again. "Review the recruitment process for this branch." Simon nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." Leo looked once more at the CCTV screen, then at the reception desk outside, because the next person sitting there must understand something Catherine did not. He paused, then said quietly, "Every human being deserves respect before they prove anything." The room stayed silent, but outside, something had already started changing, because Catherine's fall that morning was only the beginning of a much bigger transformation, and what she would face next would test her pride in ways she never imagined. When Catherine stepped out of the monitoring room, the office no longer felt like the same place. Only an hour earlier, she had walked through this same reception area with pride in her steps, her heels clicking confidently across the marble floor. People greeted her carefully. Some even avoided eye contact because they knew she could snap at them for the smallest mistake. Now, those same eyes followed her in silence, not with fear, but with something else. Shock. The news had already spread through the office like wildfire. The front desk queen had fallen. Catherine felt every stare like needles on her skin. She kept her head low as she walked back toward the reception desk to collect her things. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the small drawer where she kept her lipstick, her phone charger, and a few personal items. The desk that once felt like her throne now felt like a place she no longer deserved. Behind her, two trainees whispered quietly. "Is it true?" "Yes." The CEO himself. Catherine heard them. She did not turn around. For the first time since she joined the company, she had no sharp reply ready. Only silence. Amaka approached slowly, unsure whether to speak. "Catherine," she said gently. Catherine paused. For a moment, she thought about pretending she had not heard her. But something inside her had already begun to soften. She turned slightly. Amaka's voice was calm, not mocking. "I'm sorry things happened this way." Catherine blinked. The kindness surprised her more than the humiliation. She forced a weak smile. "I guess I deserve it." Amaka did not argue, because deep down, they both knew it was true. Across the office, Leo stood near the window speaking quietly with Simon. His posture remained calm, but his eyes occasionally moved toward the reception area. Not with anger, with observation. Simon followed his gaze. Catherine was removing the name tag from her blouse. That small movement seemed heavier than anything else. "Sir," Simon said carefully, "do you really think she can change?" Leo watched Catherine for a moment before answering. "People reveal their character in power," he said quietly. Simon nodded. "And in humility?" he asked. Leo's voice was thoughtful. That is where change begins. Back at the desk, Catherine placed the name tag gently inside her bag. The gold letters that once made her feel important now felt like a reminder of her mistake. She looked once at the slogan on the wall behind the desk. Every client matters. Her chest tightened, because that morning, she had treated someone like he did not matter at all. A tear slid quietly down her cheek, but she wiped it quickly before anyone noticed. Then she picked up her bag and walked toward the back hallway, where the cleaning department supplies were kept. Each step felt heavier than the last. The corridor was quiet. At the end of it stood a small storage room filled with brooms, mops, buckets, and cleaning chemicals. This was now her office. Catherine stopped at the doorway. Her pride screamed inside her. Part of her wanted to run away, quit, disappear. But another part of her remembered Leo's words. If you cannot respect people, you must first learn what it means to serve them. She took a slow breath, then stepped inside. But what Catherine did not know yet was that her hardest test inside that room was about to begin. The cleaning storage room smelled faintly of detergent and bleach. Catherine stood inside the doorway for a long moment, staring at the rows of mops, buckets, and brooms leaning against the wall. Just hours ago, she had been the elegant face of the company. Now she was standing in a room most staff never even entered. The irony was painful. She slowly placed her handbag on a wooden table near the wall. Her reflection stared back at her from a small cracked mirror hanging above the sink. Her makeup was still perfect. Her blouse still crisp, but something in her eyes had changed. For the first time since she got the job, she felt small. Footsteps approached the doorway. Catherine quickly wiped the corner of her eye before turning around. An elderly woman stood there, holding a plastic bucket. Her name was Mama Grace, the oldest cleaner in the building. She had worked quietly in the background since the branch opened. Most staff barely noticed her, except when they needed something cleaned. Mama Grace looked surprised. "Madam Catherine?" Catherine forced a weak smile. "You don't have to call me Madam anymore." Mama Grace frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" Catherine hesitated. Then she said softly, "I've been reassigned." The older woman studied her for a moment. Then her eyes moved slowly to the brooms beside the wall. Understanding dawned. "Ah." She said nothing more. No mocking, no judgment, just quiet understanding. That made Catherine even more uncomfortable. Mama Grace set the bucket down and began rinsing a mop in the sink. Water splashed softly against the metal basin. After a moment, she spoke gently. "This work is not easy." Catherine swallowed. "I believe that now." Mama Grace chuckled lightly. "Many people believe it only after they try it." Catherine looked down at the floor. She remembered something clearly. 3 weeks ago, Mama Grace had accidentally bumped into the reception desk while carrying cleaning supplies. Catherine had snapped at her sharply. "Watch where you're going. You almost made the place look dirty." The memory burned her chest now. Mama Grace handed her a broom. "Here." Catherine stared at it. The wooden handle felt rough in her hands. Strange. Unfamiliar. "Start with the hallway," Mama Grace said kindly. Catherine nodded slowly. She stepped out of the room and into the corridor, the same corridor she used to walk through with confidence. Now she pushed a broom across the floor. The sound of bristles against tile echoed quietly. At first, she felt every movement like humiliation, but after a few minutes, something else happened. People began passing by. Staff members who normally greeted her nervously. Now they simply nodded politely. Not mocking, not rude, just normal. And that confused her. Tunde walked past and paused. "Good afternoon, Catherine." His voice was calm, respectful, the same respect she once denied others. Catherine blinked. "Good afternoon," she replied quietly. He continued walking. No judgment, just kindness. Catherine watched him go, and suddenly, something inside her chest felt tight, because for the first time, she understood how easily people could have hated her. But they didn't. Behind the glass office wall nearby, Leo stood watching the hallway silently. Simon stood beside him. "You're observing her?" Simon asked quietly. Leo nodded. "Character does not change with punishment." Simon looked curious. "Then what changes it?" Leo's eyes followed Catherine as she swept slowly. Perspective. He paused. And sometimes, a broom can teach more than a promotion. Simon nodded slowly, but neither of them knew yet that the next person who would walk into that hallway was someone from Catherine's past, someone who remembered exactly how she used to treat people, and that meeting would shake her far more than losing her position. Catherine pushed the broom slowly along the hallway. The soft scratching sound of the bristles against the floor echoed through the quiet corridor. She was beginning to move more naturally now, not proudly, but not with the same resistance she had felt earlier. Something inside her had softened. She paused for a moment to gather dust near the corner when she heard footsteps approaching. A familiar voice followed. "Excuse me, is this the customer service office?" Catherine turned, and her heart dropped. Standing there was a young man in a simple shirt and worn shoes, holding a small brown envelope. She knew him immediately. His name was Daniel. 3 weeks ago, he had come to the reception looking nervous, asking if the company had internship openings. Catherine remembered exactly what she had said. "This is not a job center. Try somewhere else." She had not even allowed him to finish his sentence. Now he stood there again, looking confused. And Catherine was holding a broom. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Daniel looked surprised. "Catherine?" Her throat tightened. "Yes, it's me." Daniel glanced at the broom, then back at her face. But unlike what she expected, he did not laugh. He only looked thoughtful. "I came to drop my application again," he said gently. "Someone from head office told me to try today." Catherine felt shame rise in her chest. 3 weeks ago, she had judged him the same way she judged Leo. By appearance. By assumption. She swallowed slowly. "The customer service desk is at the front," she said softly. "They will help you there." Daniel nodded. But before walking away, he said something unexpected. "You know, I almost didn't come back." Catherine looked up. Daniel gave a small smile. "But my mother always says one bad person should not stop you from trying again." The words hit her harder than any insult. One bad person. She knew he meant her. And he was right. "I'm sorry," Catherine said quietly. Daniel paused. "For how I treated you before." Daniel studied her for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. "It's okay." And he meant it. He walked toward the reception. Catherine stood there holding the broom, her chest heavy with emotion. Across the hallway window, Leo had watched the entire moment. Simon stood beside him again. "Well," Simon said quietly. "That looked sincere." Leo nodded slightly. Because it was. He looked at Catherine again as she resumed sweeping. Her movements were slower now, more thoughtful. Not the sharp, arrogant woman who had pushed someone out earlier that morning. A different person was beginning to appear. Leo finally spoke. "Everyone deserves one chance to learn." Simon asked carefully, "And if they waste it?" Leo answered calmly, "Then they lose everything." He paused before adding one final thought. "But sometimes, humility builds better leaders than success ever could." Down the hallway, Catherine swept the last line of dust into the bin. For the first time since morning, she lifted her head, not with pride, but with understanding. She now knew something she had never understood before. Respect should never depend on what someone wears, or how much money they appear to have, because the man you push away today might be the one holding your future tomorrow. And sometimes, the greatest promotion in life begins with a broom. If you like this story, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.